My name is Stephen K. Loos, middle name Kent. I was almost a Timothy Kent. My dad tells me that they were really considering Timothy up until the very last minute, and then decided on Stephen kind of at the last minute because they decided that they liked that better. And I'm happy with that. You know, I'm okay with that. Was born and raised in Sterling, Colorado, which makes me one of those rare breeds. I'm a Colorado native. In fact, my family homesteaded in northeastern Colorado on both sides. So our roots in Colorado go way back. Growing up in Sterling was terrific. You know, I've often said that it was really a great way to grow up because as a young kid on a bicycle, I owned the whole town. You know, I was able to go anywhere and everywhere in town to my heart's content, and felt like I really knew the town intimately and well, and was really able to really enjoy the whole town by virtue of that. My father was also a Colorado native, born and bred in northeastern Colorado, and spent his whole life in Sterling and immediate surroundings, and was the industrial arts teacher for Sterling High School. Started out in Sterling Junior High School, and then became the industrial arts teacher for Sterling High. Well, when he retired from teaching, he also looked around and tried to figure out, you know, how he could kind of capitalize on all that experience as an industrial arts teacher, and started designing and building his own wooden toys. And this is one example. I have probably close to 30 different wooden toys. I grew up, went through high school, and long about my junior year, as I recall, I got the impression that I had better try to figure out what I wanted to be, because I remember that the annual editor was going around asking folks as in preparation for the annual that year what they wanted to be, what their career choices would be. And I couldn't think of anything at the time, and I was kind of coming off of a real enthusiasm in biology and physiology. And the only thing I could come up with was that I thought I wanted to maybe be a medical researcher. Didn't really know what that meant, but it sounded good at the time. And then it really got me started thinking about what I really wanted to do, you know, and one of the things that came to mind was that I had always really enjoyed art. And I had always really enjoyed sort of technical things, you know, drawing and so forth. Had never had any drafting or any kind of technical drawing experience. But I'd always been really frustrated by the fact that I was unable to draw futuristic cities. And it was something that really did frustrate me. I would look at, you know, Popular Science and a variety of magazines, and futuristic cities were big when I was growing up. There was a lot of speculation about what the cities of the future would look like, and I was fascinated by all that and really frustrated by the fact that I couldn't do it. And I think it was in my junior year in high school, on a pure fluke, I picked a book out of the library called Rebel in Concrete, which was a biography of Frank Lloyd Wright. And I read that book, and it was like a window opened up. I had never even known that there was such a thing as architecture in existence prior to having read that book. And it was truly, you know, sort of life-changing, because it was so fascinating, and I found that story and his story and his contribution so incredible that I almost decided right there and then that architecture seemed like something that I would really love to pursue. Started to pursue it on my own. Now, in Sterling, Colorado, in the 40s and 50s, there wasn't a lot of knowledge about architecture. And so when I told anybody that I thought I might want to be an architect, I got a lot of blank stares around Sterling, Colorado. And it was really kind of up to me to decide what that meant. And mercifully, I convinced some folks in Denver that my interest in architecture was sincere. And they suggested that the University of Colorado College of Architecture was the game in the state in terms of architectural training at the time. And so I managed to snag a scholarship to the University of Colorado and managed to get into the College of Architecture. I graduated in '69, and I got married the year before my senior year. My wife, Donna, is also from Sterling, Colorado, also a native Coloradan. And so we got married, and I was married for my senior year at CU. And I whisked her off to a palatial basement apartment on the hill in Boulder, which, as I recall, had a pretty good-sized closet in the master bedroom, the back exterior wall of which was the garage door, which had been pulled down and locked in place. And that was our exterior wall. Palatial. It was truly luxurious. Chilly in that closet, very chilly. Clothes came out of there kind of stiff with frost on occasion. We fitted out that apartment with unique inflatable plastic furniture, as I recall, because it was about all we could afford at the time. And most of it was challenged by the fact that it wouldn't hold air. So we spent a lot of time sitting on the floor in that apartment. Managed to move to really upgrade circumstances and moved to an apartment building by Hobie Wagner, which had wall-to-wall carpeting, which was just a real luxury, because if we were going to sit on the floor, at least we were able to be, reasonably comfortable doing so. I also found myself to be, increasingly interested in environmental design and in urban design. So when I graduated and Don and I were kind of looking around as to what was going to be next, I decided that I would sort of act on what has always been a pretty incurable wanderlust of mine, to see a little bit more of the world and pick up and actually move away from Colorado. So we decided that we would try the East Coast for a few years. And so we loaded up a '65 Ford Mustang, loaded down with a way overloaded trailer, and took off in the dead of winter to drive to Troy, New York, which was an experience that I certainly don't ever want to repeat. I got accepted to Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute for a graduate studies program in urban and environmental studies, which at the time just sounded perfect. It sounded like it was the absolute perfect sort of complement to my undergraduate architectural training and would lead me into some new realms, which really did prove true. I was also introduced to a gentleman by the name of Richard Brown. Richard Brown had a firm of his own which had started as an engineering company but had evolved into a land planning company. He was really interested in land planning and new communities. And at the time, in the early '70s, Richard Brown Associates, which was his company, was involved with just about all of the new communities that were currently under development in the United States. And so I managed to snag a job with Richard Brown and by virtue of that, moved to Columbia, Maryland, where his offices were located. So got to live in the new town of Columbia while working on new towns in New York, in Georgia, and in Texas, and really had a great experience for about 4 years with Richard Brown Associates. Got to the point where I felt that I had done planning. You know, I had done large-scale, environmentally based land planning and city planning, and really got the bug, the itch again to get back into architecture. And so I really set out to try to get a job with an architectural firm, and managed to get a job with Noel David O'Malley, who was the proprietor of O'Malley and Associates in Baltimore, Maryland. David O'Malley was Frank Gehry's partner and had moved out to Maryland to run one of Frank Gehry's early projects, and had never gone back to California. He decided that he liked Maryland and had stayed on, had opened his own office and so forth, and was really very deeply involved in Baltimore's urban design renaissance. He had done a lot of the early planning for the Inner Harbor and was doing a lot of projects in and around the Inner Harbor, Baltimore. So it was just a really great transition from kind of the land planning that I had been doing into something that was very much more urban design based and very much more results oriented, in that David was actually getting things built. David ultimately decided that he was going to go back to California, so through kind of a long, drawn-out process, he sort of closed his office and decided to head back to California, which left me in a situation where I spent, probably about a year on my own, kind of rattling around trying to do projects on my own for a while, and then found an opportunity with RTKL Associates, Rogers, Kostritsky, Tolliver, and Lamb, which became RTKL, which is an international firm, and managed to spend 14 years with RTKL in Baltimore, and was blessed through that whole experience with an opportunity to be the design architect for a lot of really very major projects, very significant projects. The Middle Atlantic states kind of became my beat. I was working from Georgia through Vermont, doing projects up and down the coast. The ones that immediately come to mind are Willow Grove Park outside of Philadelphia, which was the site of an old amusement park, an old suburban amusement park outside of Philly that we developed as a regional shopping center with an amusement park theme. And it was really a terrific project in that it was huge, very large project, and very complicated in terms of trying to get the entire program sort of to fit properly. You can take the boy out of Colorado, but I'm not sure you can take the Colorado out of the boy. So I was beginning to have, and my wife was too. I think we were both kind of very much on the same page with this. We were both getting very homesick. And so it just seemed like it was a very opportune time. One was that we were having these stirrings of homesickness to begin with, and secondly, my son was already out there sort of telling us how great it was, and we just decided to head back. Managed to hook up with some old classmates. Jim Copeland, Ron Abo, John Preby, and Danny Cervantes were guys that I'd known for a long time, and managed to work with them for a number of years doing laboratory and research and development-based projects, many of which were for the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, which took me right back to that sort of environmental design enthusiasm that I had coming out of college, and was really, looking back on it, seems to me to be really at the forefront of what has become the sort of whole green revolution and the whole sustainability enthusiasm. So we were able to get in kind of on the very beginnings of that whole movement, and I think do some really interesting projects out there at NREL. Moving back to Colorado after 23 years on the East Coast, a lot of my old relationships in Colorado had atrophied pretty badly. You know, I'd kept in touch with a few people and so forth, but I didn't know a lot of folks when we moved back into Colorado. And one of the first things that I did was to reach out to AIA in Colorado, in particular the North Chapter around Boulder, and got involved with the activities in the North Chapter. I was almost immediately, it was one of those things where I guess I didn't, I showed up at the wrong day and immediately got appointed the membership chair for the North Chapter, not very long after I was, first introduced to the organization. So my first introduction was as membership chair for the North Chapter, and immediately got involved in the activities of the component and so forth. But the real crucial part of that introduction was that the AIA really was so welcoming to me back to Colorado. They made that transition so much more easily accomplished by virtue of introducing me to a lot of new people, getting involved in a whole bunch of new activities. And it was just a really great way of kind of getting back into the swing of things in Colorado after being gone for so long. I had never really been very involved while I was back in Maryland. And it wasn't until Colorado, moving back to Colorado, that I really sort of found my way into getting involved and kind of trying to express myself through the Institute. And that manifests itself by virtue of the fact that I sort of rose through the ranks in AIA, starting out as the membership chair, as I said, and becoming North Chapter president, and by virtue of being North Chapter president, having a presence on the AIA Colorado State Board, eventually became the AIA Colorado president, and through that became involved in the region, and the region became the Western Mountain Region secretary first of all, and began to get involved in a little broader pool of involvement through the region, and then finally got elected as the regional director for the Western Mountain Region, which took me to AIA National and the AIA National Board of Directors, which started in 2006 and ran for 3 terrific years, very short years, as they turned out to be. They went awfully quickly, but it was a really fantastic experience of being able to sort of have an involvement at the national level. I feel truly blessed that it all took place the way it did, and looking back on finding that book, I'm awfully glad I found it, because I'm not sure what else I would have done. And the fact that I've had such a diverse career as a designer and have had such a broad range of project types, each one kind of its own learning curve and its own sort of experience unto itself, has been phenomenal. It has been a constantly renewing and kind of re-energizing experience with every step along the way. So, as I say, I'm not sure how I could have found that anyplace else.